Good afternoon. I'm John Bitson, the Menard Family Director of the Sheila and Robert Challey Institute for Global Innovation and Growth. I'd like to introduce you to Jeremy Jackson. Jeremy is a professor of economics at ndsu, director of the Center for the Study of Public Choice and Private Enterprise, and a Challey Institute faculty scholar. Welcome, Jeremy.
Good to be here, John.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So, Jeremy, you have a lot of very interesting research on a wide variety of topics.
I'm glad you think it's interesting.
What kinds of questions do you aim to tackle with your research?
So I have a couple of strains of research that I'm currently working on. I'm, first of all, interested in policy issues that are relevant for the state, so I have been focusing more on some particular policy issues for our state. But I also, in general, have a broad interest in the effect of institutions on people's behavior. And that corresponds to a number of things. In particular, how do institutions affect trust among individuals? A lot of economics research has shown that trust is really important for things like economic development and economic growth. It really is a foundational element of what helps people to transact. So I've looked at the connections between economic freedom and trust, the relationship between regulation and trust. And I currently have a really, I think, interesting paper that is the first to really truly tackle the question of how institutions truly affect behavior. And I say that because usually when we have behavioral studies, everybody is usually underneath the same set of institutions. Sometimes a researcher is able to simulate an institution in an experimental setting, but that experiment still happens, say, maybe with ndsu students back in an experimental lab. We were able to make use of metadata. Actually, we did a meta study that looks at experiments all across the world over time to allow us to look at how real institutions influence actual behavior. And in particular, a lot of it has to do with how does it affect instances of trust and how people relate to one another in those games. So that's, maybe a little more detailed than you wanted, John. But
oh, that's excellent. Very interesting. Could you talk a little bit about why your research is important and the impact that your research has on society?
As I said, the institutions and how they influence how people behave is I think very foundational. Partly there's that issue of trust, but even more broadly, we just know that things like economic freedom and property rights are things that help economies grow. It's been one of the things that truly has been an explanatory variable for why some countries are rich and some are not. But also with the issue of social trust, we're not just interested in economic growth for the sake of having more stuff, but we actually want to have better, more flourishing lives. And social trust, and I'll broaden it to social capital, has also been shown to be one of the most enduring pieces that contribute to long-term well-being. So when you get an influx of money, we're happy, but we quickly adapt to having a higher income, and then the happiness gains tend to wear off. But when social capital and social trust increases, the gains in well-being tend to actually last. They don't have the same adaptation problem.
Yeah, excellent. Are there additional questions you'd like to tackle with your research in the future?
I'm currently looking at some more in-depth analysis of North Dakota and our own tax structures. In particular, I'm looking at some property tax relief programs in our state Property tax relief has been kind of an ongoing, perpetual issue that comes up. So I'm hopeful to have some interesting things to say about some of our property tax relief efforts fairly soon. And one of the kind of, to give you a little preview of kind of what my research is looking at is the effect of what we call fiscal illusion. In particular, the type of property tax relief that North Dakota has engaged in hasn't really removed the burden of the tax, as so much displaced where the money comes from and how it flows. And it tends to make the overall public finance system more complicated, which tends to lead to increased budgets. So part of the question is, has our method of property tax relief actually contributed to increases in spending?
Very interesting. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you find out with your research in the future, and I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and talk about it today. So, thanks.
It's good to be here.
Thanks.